A racist cop arrests a high-ranking military officer, not knowing he's about to lose everything, when the general makes one phone call that changes his life forever. Comment below with what you would have done in his place. He didn't break stride. Lieutenant General Marcus Washington sat motionless in his government-issued black suburban hands, resting at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, his eyes fixed on the navigation screen that had frozen mid-route. He wasn't lost, he was recalibrating. Fort Belvoir's access roads had changed after months of construction, and though he'd commanded troops through the maze-like streets of Baghdad, even the most decorated soldiers could get turned around when familiar landmarks disappeared blue and red lights exploded in his rearview mirror. The ambient hum of passing traffic faded as his focus shifted to the patrol car that had materialized behind him. He exhaled not from fear, not from anger, but with that bone-deep weariness that black folks know intimately, the kind that comes when history taps you on the shoulder, whispering, "Here we go again." He lowered his window before being instructed, hands remaining visible on the wheel where I can see them. The command came sharp and unnecessary. From an officer whose nameplate read Donovan, the man's posture was rigid. His right hand hovering near his holster, voice already edged with the assumption of danger. Marcus's face remained composed, his expression unreadable, a composure forged in war rooms, not on street corners. License and registration officer Donovan snapped, head tilted at an angle that suggested suspicion rather than routine. "May I reach for them now, Sir Marcus?" asked his voice, carrying the precise, measured cadence of someone who understood the choreography of survival in this particular American dance. Donovan nodded curtly, eyes never leaving Marcus's hands as they moved deliberately toward the glove compartment. Every movement calculated, slow enough to telegraph intentions, but not so slow as to suggest defiance the way every black parent has taught their children since time immemorial. It didn't matter that he had 3 stars on his uniform or that he'd been awarded the Distinguished Service Medal. It didn't matter that he'd briefed presidents and commanded thousands. What mattered in this moment was how Officer Donovan saw him. Just another black man in an expensive vehicle on the wrong stretch of highway. "My registration is current," Sir Marcus offered. Respectfully, I pulled over briefly to reset my navigation system, which had frozen. Nothing illegal about stopping momentarily for safety reasons. The officer barely glanced at the documents in his hand. Instead, he stepped back, his stance widening. "Are you military?" he asked. "Yes, sir. 27 years of service," Marcus answered. "Step out of the vehicle. I'm not under arrest, officer," I said. "Step out." Donovan's voice rose a silver. Honda slowed as it passed the driver, already lifting a phone to record. Another car pulled onto the shoulder further back, a young woman with press credentials hanging from her rearview mirror. Marcus noticed these details with the strategic awareness that had kept him alive through 3 combat tours, the same awareness that now told him this encounter was escalating beyond reason. He unbuckled his seatbelt. Each movement fluid controlled the kind of control that comes from understanding the weight of both uniform and consequence. "Any weapons on you?" Donovan demanded. As Marcus stood tall beside the Suburban, "No, sir, my service weapon is secured on base as per regulations." Donovan circled him like a predator, sizing up prey. "So you're what, some kind of desk jockey? I'm the deputy commander of U.S. Army Forces command you, right? And I'm the Secretary of Defense." Donovan scoffed. The woman with the press credentials was now standing beside her car, filming openly, her press pass visible even from this distance. Marcus kept his eyes forward. shoulders squared, spine straight. Donovan completed his circle, returning to stand too close. Seem like you're in a mighty big hurry for someone who claims they just pulled over to check directions. The accusation hung in the air, untrue but demanding. Responses are, I'd appreciate if you'd run my credentials, Marcus suggested evenly. I believe we're past the point of a routine traffic stop. Oh, you're about to get a check, all right, Donovan muttered. He grabbed Marcus's wrist without warning, twisted it behind his back and pushed him face first against the Suburban. The cold metal of handcuffs closed around Marcus's wrists with unnecessary force. The woman with the press badge shouted, "Hey, what's he being arrested for?" While approaching closer, another car stopped a man. In Air Force fatigues, stepped out, hand already reaching for his phone. Marcus didn't flinch, didn't resist the pressure. On his back, or the indignity of the moment, his mind remained razor-sharp. Even as Donovan recited rights, he had no business reading. You have the right to remain silent. He started. Lieutenant Colonel Sophia Chen stood watching from the shoulder of the road, her Defense Department press credentials swinging from her neck as she recorded the scene with unwavering focus. She'd recognized Marcus Washington immediately. Every Pentagon correspondent knew the three-star general whose calm leadership during the Ankara crisis had saved countless lives. But Officer Donovan couldn't have known, likely wouldn't have cared, that the man he was now shoving into the back of his patrol car had received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, had testified before Congress just last week. Chen lifted her phone higher, making sure to capture Donovan's nameplate, his badge number, the patrol car identification. As Marcus settled into the back seat, his expression remained impassive, but his eyes met hers. For just a moment, and in that glance she understood exactly what he needed her to do. She stepped forward. Sir Lieutenant Colonel Sophia Chen, Defense Department Press Corps. She called, her voice carrying across the roadside scene, where now dozen cars had stopped. You're detaining Lieutenant General Marcus Washington, Deputy Commander of U.S. Army Forces Command. Donovan's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. This doesn't concern you, ma'am. Step back, please. I'm going to need to call this in. Chen replied already. Darling, this is a matter of national security. You do that, Donovan said with a dismissive wave. While I deal with your general here who was driving erratically. I have it all on video, Sir Chen replied calmly, including the part where the general was legally stopped to adjust his navigation system, and you escalated. Without cause, Donovan stepped toward her, expression, darkening, hand moving to his belt. Interfering with police business is a chargeable offense. So is unlawfully detaining a senior military commander. The new voice came from behind them. Strong female, and unmistakably authoritative. Brigadier General Elise Jackson stood at the edge of the road in full uniform, her driver waiting beside a black government Suburban, identical to Marcus's. Her expression was composed, but her eyes were sharp as cut. Diamonds. Officer Donovan, I'm going to need you to remove those handcuffs immediately, she said, walking forward with the kind of confidence that made people instinctively step aside in her path. And who exactly are you? Donovan demanded badge. Still. Please, Brigadier General Elise Jackson, Chief of Staff to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. She replied, her voice never rising above conversational level. I was on my way to meet with General Washington when we received word of this incident from Colonel Chen. Donovan hesitated, the gathering crowd, the cameras, the sudden appearance of a second high-ranking officer, all culminating in the first flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. I'm conducting a legitimate traffic stop, he insisted. No. One's above the law, absolutely correct. Elise nodded. which is why I've already contacted your department's Internal Affairs Division to ensure this interaction is properly documented. Now the handcuffs, please. The air seemed to vibrate with tension. As Donovan weighed his options, the calculation visible on his face until finally he moved to the patrol car and opened the back door, Marcus emerged with dignity, despite the restraints, his face betraying nothing, as Donovan reluctantly unlocked. The cuffs, General Washington. Elise acknowledged with a formal nod. "Are you all right, sir? I'm fine." General Jackson, Marcus replied, rolling his shoulders slightly as the crowd around them grew. Sophia Chen still recording everything. "Let's discuss this." "Back at the Pentagon, wait just a minute," Donovan interjected. "You can't just leave." "Actually, he can," Elise replied. "The Pentagon's legal office is already processing this incident. You'll be hearing from them shortly regarding your violation of Code 18 U.S.C. Parv 242, deprivation of rights under color of law, and numerous military protocols regarding the detention of command-level officers. Was just doing my job." Donovan protested. "Your job," Elise said, looking directly into his eyes, "is to protect and serve, not to profile, not to intimidate, and certainly not to handcuff a 3-star general because you didn't bother to read his identification. You'll be receiving formal paperwork shortly. I suggest you prepare your statement." Marcus had already moved toward his vehicle, his composure never wavering. He started the engine as Elise returned to her Suburban. The small crowd that had gathered parted respectfully, several people saluting as he pulled away behind Elise's vehicle, leaving Officer Donovan standing alone on the roadside, surrounded by witnesses and cameras, the beginning of a storm that would soon engulf his entire career. The conference room at the Fairfax County Police Department headquarters felt too small for the number of people gathered around the polished table. Captain Richard Holloway sat at the head, sweat beading at his temples. Despite the aggressive air conditioning, Internal Affairs investigator Monique Watson sat to his right. Stone-faced, as she reviewed the folder in front of her, across from them sat Officer James Donovan. His uniform pressed his posture rigid, but his eyes darting nervously between the faces assembled. "Do you know who Lieutenant General Marcus Washington is, Captain?" Holloway asked finally. Breaking the suffocating silence, Donovan swallowed before answering. "I do now, Siran. Did you know when you put him in handcuffs he didn't identify himself as a general?" Donovan said defensively. "Just said he was military. Lots of people claim military connections." Watson opened the folder, sliding forward a printed screenshot of Marcus's military ID, clearly visible in the officer's body cam footage. "This ID, which you were holding for approximately 47 seconds, according to timestamps, clearly states Lieutenant General Marcus Washington, U.S. Army." Donovan remained silent. "What made you escalate this encounter?" Holloway pressed into a physical detention. He was evasive. Donovan muttered. Gave vague answers about the Pentagon, seemed suspicious. Watson repeated, "How exactly does a man in a government vehicle with government plates, military ID, and proper registration reading a navigation system appear suspicious to you?" It was his attitude. Donovan insisted, the way he wouldn't make eye contact. Watson closed the folder. "This isn't your first complaint regarding interactions with minority drivers, is it?" Officer Donovan, 4 previous complaints in the last 18 months, all from black or Hispanic drivers, all dismissed, but a pattern nonetheless. "I don't see race when I'm doing my job," Donovan protested. That, Watson said, might be exactly the problem. Captain Holloway leaned forward, hands folded on the table. "The Pentagon has formally requested your termination. The footage has been viewed by the Department of Defense. The governor's office, and as of this morning over 2 million people online. They're calling it racial profiling, and honestly, I can't see it any other way. Donovan's face flushed. I was following protocol for suspicious behavior. Holloway shook his head. You violated multiple protocols, ignored proper identification procedures, and escalated a routine stop into an arrest without cause. Effective immediately. You're suspended. Pending termination proceedings. The department cannot and will not defend your actions. Across town in his spacious office at the Pentagon, Marcus Washington stood at the window watching aircraft land at Reagan National Airport, the Potomac River shimmering below. Brigadier General Elise Jackson sat in one of the leather chairs facing his desk. Lieutenant Colonel Chen stood nearby, notebook in hand. The Justice Department wants a statement. Marcus Elise said quietly, they're opening a formal investigation into the department, not just Donovan. Marcus turned from the window. I didn't want this to become a spectacle. It already is, Sir Chen replied gently. The video has gone viral, 3 million views and counting. The hashtag #Don'tYouRespect. The stars is trending nationwide. People want to hear from you. Marcus returned to his desk, sitting with the precise posture that had become second nature over decades of service. What would you have me say? That this is somehow unique or surprising, that a uniform shields black men from racism, that stars on a shoulder change? How we're seen. Elise leaned forward. This isn't just about you, Marcus, and you know it. The military has remained silent on these issues for too long. You have a platform now, a moment that could create real change. Marcus stared at the challenge coin on his desk, tracing the outline with his fingertip. My father was a sergeant in Vietnam, came home with a Purple Heart, and couldn't get a taxi in his uniform. Couldn't buy a house in certain neighborhoods despite serving his country. I joined, believing things would be different, and in some ways they are. But in the ways that matter. He paused, collecting his thoughts. I'll make a statement, not for publicity, not to destroy that officer's career, but because silence serves no one. Chen nodded respectfully. When tomorrow? Marcus decided, same time that Donovan pulled me over. Let's make it mean something. The Pentagon briefing room buzzed with anticipation, cameras focused on the empty podium, flags standing at attention. Behind it, journalists from every major network filled the seats, checking recorders, adjusting microphones at precisely 1400 hours. Marcus Washington entered through the side door alone, his uniform, perfect medals gleaming under the lights. He approached the podium with the same measured stride that had carried him through war zones and White House briefings, his face composed but not cold, eyes clear and direct. Good afternoon, he began. My name is Lieutenant General Marcus Washington. I've served this country through 4 administrations, 2 wars, and countless operations, both classified and public. I've been trusted with national secrets, the lives of American troops and missions critical to our national security. His voice remained steady as he continued, and 6 days ago I was handcuffed on the side of Route 15. Not because I broke any law, not because I posed any threat, but because when Officer James Donovan looked at me, he saw a threat before seeing a man, much less a soldier. Marcus paused, letting the words settle in the silent room. I'm not here to vilify a single officer. I'm here to address a system where such encounters happen with disturbing regularity, where uniform and rank provide insufficient protection against bias, where the color of my skin seems to matter more than the content of my character, or the stars on my shoulder. He looked directly into the central camera. This isn't about me. I was lucky I had resources, connections, people who could intervene. Millions of Americans don't have those advantages. When they're profiled, harassed, or worse, their stories don't make headlines, their encounters don't go viral, their calls for help go unanswered. The room remained silent, captivated as he continued. Today, I'm announcing the formation of the Military Civil Rights Initiative, a joint program between the Department of Defense and Justice Department to examine and address biased policing nationwide using data training and accountability measures to ensure that law enforcement serves all communities equally. The Pentagon is committed to protecting America not just from foreign threats, but from injustice within our borders. He straightened almost imperceptibly. I won't be taking questions today, but I will be taking action, and I invite every American who believes in equal protection under the law to join me. There are no special privileges in a true democracy, only equal rights. Thank you, as Marcus stepped away from the podium. The room erupted with questions, but he didn't turn back. His message delivered his mission clear for the first time since the incident. His expression softened slightly, the first hint of something like hope crossing his features as he exited the briefing room. 3 weeks later, James Donovan sat in his apartment watching the hearing on his laptop screen. Congressional leaders questioned Marcus Washington about the Military Civil Rights Initiative. Donovan's termination had been finalized the previous day, his police union declining to appeal. Citing the overwhelming evidence and public pressure, his phone had stopped ringing. His social media accounts deleted after the flood of messages on screen. Marcus answered questions with the same calm dignity he'd shown on the roadside, never mentioning Donovan by name, never calling for vengeance, just steady, persistent advocacy for change. Donovan closed the laptop screen, the silence of his apartment pressing in on him, the uncertainty of his future looming. Like a shadow he'd had time to think about that day, to replay it countless times in his mind at first, with defensive anger, then with growing discomfort, and finally with the beginning of something that might eventually become understanding. He'd been wrong, not just procedurally, but fundamentally wrong in ways that had cost him his career, but had taught him something he'd needed to learn the hardest way possible. Across the city at Fort Belvoir, Marcus Washington stood before a classroom of newly commissioned officers, their faces young, eager, attentive. He wasn't scheduled to speak here, his presence a surprise, his stars commanding respect. But it was his words that held their attention. Leadership isn't tested when things go well. He told them it's tested in moments of challenge, of injustice, of adversity. A young lieutenant raised her hand. "Sir, how did you stay so calm during the incident?" "Everyone's seen the video." Marcus considered the question. "Leadership isn't about emotional reaction. It's about effective response. I remained calm because anger wouldn't serve the greater purpose, and because dignity can be the most powerful form of resistance." Another hand rose, this time from a black lieutenant in the back row. "Sir, did you always believe the system would correct itself?" Marcus smiled slightly. "No, Lieutenant, I didn't. But I believe in making the system better than I found it. That's the responsibility we all share as officers, as citizens, as human beings." Another voice asked, "Will the officer who arrested you face criminal charges?" "That's not my decision," Marcus replied, "and not my goal. This isn't about punishment. It's about progress." The Military Civil Rights Initiative isn't created to target individuals, but to transform institutions. After the session ended, Marcus walked the grounds of the base, The early evening air crisp with approaching autumn, Colonel Chen fell into step beside him. The initiative's first report launches tomorrow. Polling shows 78% public support, impressive for any military program. Marcus nodded. The real work is just beginning. Chen hesitated, then asked, was it worth it? The humiliation, the handcuffs, the publicity, all of it. Marcus stopped, looking across the parade grounds, where a group of young soldiers lowered the flag with ceremonial precision. Worth it, he repeated. I didn't choose what happened that day, but I could choose what happened next sometimes. Change requires sacrifice, sometimes progress, demands that someone stand in the gap. I'm hardly the first to do so. Hopefully the difference I make will honor those who came before and protect those who come after. That night at his home outside Alexandria, Marcus stood on his deck watching the lights of the city. In the distance, his phone buzzed with a message from his sister. Have you seen the news she'd written? Police departments in 12 states have voluntarily adopted the initiative's training protocols before the official launch. Marcus smiled, setting the phone down. He knew this was just the beginning. The road ahead would be long, difficult, filled with resistance and setbacks, but for the first time in years he felt something shift. Not just in policy, but in possibility, a door pushed open that couldn't easily be closed again. On his desk inside lay a handwritten note from a young black lieutenant who'd attended his talk at Fort Belvoir. The message simple but powerful, sir, today. I walked into a room where they expected just another black man, but saw a soldier, because you made them look. Thank you for standing in the gap. Marcus Washington, 3-star general, decorated combat veteran, and now reluctant symbol, looked out at the country he had sworn to protect. His expression thoughtful, his resolve unbroken. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, he allowed himself a moment to breathe, to acknowledge what had been accomplished, not through anger, not through vengeance, but through the quiet, unstoppable force of dignity under fire and the power of standing firm when the world demands you kneel.